It's going to be a rocky road for gold and silver in the future. Inflation is going to play a factor, but interest rate rises will come in at some point, and that will cause a massive growth for everything potentially except gold and silver. Silver and gold are that safe haven, there to protect you in times of turbulence. But when there is an opportunity for growth, you'll find a lot of the money that's out there in this world will flock away from gold and silver. Hello everybody, Backyard Bullion here, and a warm welcome to all joining me for another precious metal ramble. And today I want to continue with one of the big themes of the channel that we have created here and talk about precious metals in a way that challenges the normal way of thinking. Now, there are, of course, a whole multitude of different approaches to investing in coins, precious metals, silver, gold, platinum, whatever it might be. And none of them are specifically wrong, and none of them are specifically right either. It's very much down to everybody's individual circumstances. But one thing that a great deal of silver enthusiasts, silver bugs, and people on the internet, it's a wonderful place, it's a wonderful and horrible place at the same time, talk about is silver and gold being this protection against the collapse of dollars in the future. And I have many times in the past talked about how I don't think that that's something that's really very likely to happen. In fact, one of my most popular videos that I've ever created was talking about how we've seen various currencies around the world in different countries, like Venezuela, collapse. But the chances of something like that really happening in a big westernized economy like the US or the UK or the Eurozone is, in my opinion, negligible, next to nothing. It's just not something that's likely. It would cause mass hysteria and complete, destruction of Western society and civilization. So why should you stack silver if not for a big sort of collapsing apocalyptic scenario? There are a whole host of other different reasons that are much more, I think, beneficial in my mind anyway, and I do want to run through a few of them here today to show you that perhaps it's not all doom and gloom about silver and gold, and it's not necessarily reliant on just complete collapses in that market and world. So do bear in mind, though, that I am not a financial advisor. I'm not a qualified financial advisor. I'm just a guy who likes to talk about shiny things here on YouTube. So please bear that in mind and remember to make the right decisions that are right for you. And if you have differing opinions to what I have to say here today, then please do share them. That's one of the reasons why we make these videos, to share a discourse, to get interesting thoughts and opinions from various different walks of life and strategies out there as well. Now, one of the big arguments here is about the economy of the future and how things seem to be a little bit out of control at the moment. Inflation is the big key word. It's the big sort of momentum shift in the silver markets that we've seen, certainly in the collectible and bullion markets over the last sort of 9-10 months. Basically since sort of January, February, we had this huge spike, this huge social media hype shift for basically Wall Street silver and the silver squeeze and trying to end the Fed. And I'm not a fan of that kind of mentality. Why would anybody want to endorse the collapse of a system which they are a part of? Makes very little sense to me. But it has caused this big kind of shift in people thinking that silver and gold are the only thing to protect you against the future, and inflation is going to eventually run out of control. Now, I don't disagree that there are some incredibly concerning and worrying economic factors at play when you look at the sheer amount of debt and spending that's happened over this last year and a half, 2 years. Certainly in the build-up to COVID, it was bad, and then COVID hit, and of course you just have to look at all of the figures to go, goodness me, surely it's even worse. But a lot of people, prior to the complete mess that was COVID, and it's something that's going to be completely unprecedented in the last century, for an entire, basically entire first world planet to just completely shut down, lock down, close their doors for business was just completely unheard of. And for countries and economies and currencies to still be going pretty strong, if I'm being brutally honest, shows that actually even in that really awful situation where, pretty much all business had to shut up shop for a short time, it was actually fine. We got through it. Now, I'm not saying that there won't be things to pay for in the future, but as with all markets, as with all kind of historical data of markets shows, there's always ups, there's always downs. And when we saw the massive drop in all markets last year, it's recovered, and it's actually recovered better than a lot of other people have seen. Silver and gold, somewhat though, are a little bit behind on that front. When you look at some of the highs that we saw last year, of course, silver and gold both dropped down quite considerably right at the start of this whole crisis, as the various institutions of Wall Street and the other financial institutions around the world had to essentially sell off some of their assets, including their liquid assets of silver and gold, to pay their margin calls. So it flooded the market. Lots of very cheap silver and gold out there. Not necessarily for physical silver and gold, of course, but we'll put that into another subject for another video, perhaps another day. But my point is that things went down and then they've recovered quite considerably. So considerably, in fact, that when you look at various different stocks and shares and different indexes, they are significantly higher than where they were at the start of this process. So whilst we have had a huge amount of additional burden and spending and just countless amounts of pounds, pennies, pence, dollars, euros and yen just thrown at everything in this world, more of it has been created. The growth is real, the growth is happening, the recovery is happening. And whilst people will be looking at inflation, and there's this phrase, transitory inflation, which a lot of people within silver and gold communities kind of ridicule a little bit and laugh at, and just they just ignore this idea that actually the recovery can actually fuel a lot of what's going to preserve the currencies and way of life that we all know. I think that is something that a lot of people just will flat out ignore if they've just got it in their head that things are going to go wrong. Things are on the outs, and it's actually time now to hold this stuff. No, I think actually you'll find that silver and gold will do all right, but all things considered, there are plenty of other investments out there that will do better, and certainly will do better when we come out of this in the next year and a half with potential interest rate rises. Now, inflation, let's just focus on this again, because you hear hyperinflation as a phrase, and as I said, one of my most popular videos about Venezuela and how that currency failed and hyperinflated away to nothing, and how members of the Venezuelan population are buying things with gold and silver and using that. And to a certain extent, that is applicable, and it can be done. It is possible, but it's not really that you go down to the shops with your gold and silver and you buy things with it. It's more of a barter exchange system, and it's not a currency anymore. It's used to potentially cash out into other things, using dollars, using other currencies, and the like. Yes, you can physically exchange the gold and silver for various different goods and commodities and food, but it's not necessarily as easy as people think. But that situation is very unlikely in the US or UK kind of world and scenario. And one of the reasons for that is the power of the economy that sits behind the currency itself, and the ability for that currency to try and control itself through inflation and interest rates. Now, inflation is something that pretty much all governments actually want. They want certainly if they're in debt anyway, their currency, they want it to devalue, so that if you owe $1 trillion, then next year, if that currency loses 2% in value, then that $2 trillion is actually not quite as burdensome a debt as it once was. And that's something that I think a lot of people just gloss over quite quickly when it comes to this thing. So yes, there are a very large amount of zeros on the end of a lot of the kind of debt numbers of various different countries around the world, in this sort of first world, westernized world. But a lot of that is not necessarily as valuable as it once was. Now, I'm not going to disagree that debt isn't concerning, and it does concern me, which is why I have gold and silver, and why I think as well gold and silver will form a part of a kind of protection of wealth going forwards. But at the same time, it's not something to put all your eggs into. All of that into one basket is not a wise course of action. So just bear that in mind when looking at your silver and gold potentially into the future. You're thinking, oh, this is something to go all in on. It's not necessarily as cut and dry as that. And I do genuinely think that next year, I mean, we've seen so many different wobbles in the silver and gold markets over this last year, as and when interest rate potential hikes have been talked about or hinted about by various different countries. There's always been a little bit of a wobble in the currency values, which is intrinsically linked, of course, to the value of the gold and silver in our stacks. So it is going to be interesting to see what happens when interest rates are changed. And for a lot of people who think and will say they can't possibly raise interest rates, they can't afford the debt. Well, my point here is, of course, that inflation has happened maybe 2%, 3% over this last year. So if they increase the interest rate by 0.5%, they're still managing that debt. They're still managing that to, it's devalued to a point where it's still manageable, even with the interest rate increasing. And also, you'll find a lot of the debt that is required to be paid is not necessarily debt that's incurred right now. It's debt that's been incurred many, many years ago. So, government bonds and things like that, they are something that's different to your just bog standard investment product. They are very, very secure and very good. So when interest rates go up and governments do look, I mean, the fact that the US government could collapse is just a non-factor for a lot of people, and a lot of sort of the institutions out there will not think that is something that will happen. Maybe it will, maybe I'll be wrong, but I can't see that happening, and I think a lot of other institutions won't. So when the interest rates go up and they get a secured, better return on their investment over a short or long-term period of time, that's going to happen, and you'll find a lot of money being moved out of metals, out of these precious metals, into these types of investments from the big players of the market. And that will only fuel not only the value of the dollar, it will strengthen the dollar, it will then devalue the buying power of your currency when it comes to gold and silver, making the gold and silver price go down. So there is going to be an interesting couple of months, I think, ahead in the build-up to the rest of the year. I don't think we're going to see a great deal of movement coming out for the rest of the year. But, as with many other people, I really don't have a crystal ball or a tangible clue as to what will go on with the metal markets. But what I can see is that we're not going to get any huge, massive rise-ups to even $30 an ounce silver anytime soon. Maybe $2,000 an ounce gold is not out of the realms of possibility before the interest rates really change that. But it does seem like there's a new norm level, new low level that we're seeing right now, around sort of $22 to $24 an ounce for silver, and around the sort of $17.50 for gold. I haven't really got any strong feelings that it'll go much lower than that. So it's an interesting time for sure. We'll see where things end up next year. I know that it's going to be unpredictable. You just don't know whether there's going to be another variant, another wave of lockdowns and interruption on business and everything. It could be a completely different story come a few weeks' time. Who knows? But one thing is for sure, and that is that there is no one out there that can tell you what is right for you other than you. So make sure that you do your own research when looking to buy this stuff, whether it be high value proof coins or just your bog standard bullion. Make sure that what you're doing is right for you and it's for the right reasons for your investments as well. Otherwise, I'd love to hear from you about your situations, about your thoughts, about the reasons why you're buying or not buying, or why you're stacking. That's one of the reasons we make this style of videos, challenging the norm, getting that brain juice flowing so that we can all make informed decisions that are right for ourselves. So we'll see you down in the comment section for a fun, healthy debate. And if you have enjoyed this video and this presentation and our style, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. Like 70% of all the views on this channel that are not subscribed, hit that subscribe button if you want to see what we do in the future. Otherwise, that is it from me. A big thank you to you all for watching. We'll see you on the next one. And as always, please make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.